Ooh, now we're live.
We are live. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another sort of wildcat episode recording of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast. And glad you're here. And we're going to get going. I'm going to count it down. Five, four, three.
So, Kip, what are we going to talk about today on episode 202 of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast? It's not gonna get old talking about how we've crossed over into the 200s for at least another 15 episodes. Then I'll probably get bored of talking about it.
Well, it took us a long time, what, 8 years to get to this place?
Something like that.
It was a while. So yeah, we got to celebrate, right? But how are we going to celebrate today? We are going to turn off our other audio. That's what we're going to do. Holy moly! All right, no more echoes.
I was about to have I was about to really flip out
I
given
know.
given the history of this particular episode
I
attempting to do it.
know. This
So
is not the first time we've tried to do
yeah,
this episode.
no, it is not. This is very unusual. And Kip, that was almost traumatic.
That was
Okay,
ice
so
through my
so
veins.
Kip, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm
What?
gonna say, so Kip, what are we gonna talk about today on episode 202 of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast?
Today, we're going to learn about why organizations do this silly thing. They run outdated technology, like Windows 2003,
Nobody does
in
that.
in 2026, right?
Wait, do they do that?
That's why Anton's here. But I haven't had a chance to introduce him yet. He knows all
was-
about this.
It was rhetorical anyway.
Okay. Well, it's very risky to do this, and so, but people do it, and you got to wonder, like, why do they do it? What should they be doing instead? Well, look, we've got Anton Shivakin here. He works at the office of the CISO at Google Cloud. Okay, so he has this amazing perspective. It's rare and valuable on this topic. So I wanted him to join us. He's a podcaster as well. Many of you may have been listening to his podcast already, and if you have, welcome to our podcast. But Anton, thank you for being here. Would love it if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the show for the second time. Sorry, it's not a jab, but as a fellow podcaster, I have all the compassion in the world for the mishaps of all sorts. But yes, anyhow, I work for Google Cloud Office of the CISO, which is a fun organization created by Phil Venables when he was a CISO. And we typically tend to help clients, usually large enterprises, with cloud and lately with AI quite a bit. My past is, well, I want to say my past is dark. It's not that dark. I was never a hacker. So, for example, anyhow, I was a Gartner analyst for 8 years, which some people would say is an opposite of being a hacker, but it's not entirely true. I did have to hack IT inertia at many companies because people would call and ask questions, which made me think, hey, get your time machine and fly back to 1998. Why are you here? But anyhow, with this somewhat disorganized intro, I would also say that I was a vendor before I was an analyst, and I was a consultant for a bit. So it's sort of a career. I was never an end user CISO. That's important to know. If somebody wants to trust me less as a result, such is life.
Okay, and I also want to mention you've done a few other things too, right? You were the head of solution strategy at Chronicle, which is now called Google Security Operations, right, or Google SecOps, and you worked on the HoneyNet project, which I think is particularly interesting. We could do a whole episode on that.
Yep.
You worked at Qualys, and I now also want to make sure everybody knows you co-host the Cloud Security Podcast by Google, right, which is a very search-friendly name. We talked about that before.
No, not again.
And you do that with Timothy Peacock, right?
Correct. Yes, he's my co-host from our founding in 2019. Well, 2019 was an idea, and then the 2021 is when we started airing. So I am a little unsure what to think. You just mentioned you made it to 208 years. We kind of made it to 204. No, in 5 years.
5 years. Would you release every week?
We do release every week, except for the first few weeks when we were very scared of releasing every week because it sounded like a horrible C word, commitment.
Yeah.
And but very soon we realized that we are kind of awash in material. And we have this running joke with Tim is that we each have to remind each other that we are not doing more often than weekly. Weekly is it. We are not switching to anything else. But we are doing specials at times. So we've done midweek episodes maybe 5 times in our entire existence. But ultimately it's a weekly, and occasionally we are like short of episodes, and sometimes we're like very... we have a big backlog. So right now we are maybe recording late February. What would air late February?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I guess Kip can blame me for not doing more regular podcasts. Twice a month is already my lawyer maximum.
Well, it's pretty much my fractional CISO maximum too. So, but
So
you're
there we
right.
go.
There's no lack of content for sure.
Yeah. So when Anton, when you and Kip were doing show prep again, you said something like IT inertia is the most powerful force in the universe. What is that? I mean, first of all, I think I agree, but what does that mean? So I'm sure if I agree or not.
Okay, so it's this whole line, pithy line, came to me when I was leaving Gartner in 2019. And I wanted to write a beautiful, reflective blog post about what I learned in 8 years at Gartner. And I went through my inquiries, through my, presentations I've done, and from my research I've written, and I kind of started to think, wow, lots of fun things. But then I had this kind of like Zen-like epiphany, is that probably the only one thing that came to me as like, if I have to pick one, was this line, is that almost never bet against IT inertia, or that IT inertia is the most powerful force in the universe. And if you assume that some mid-90s tech would never be used in mid-2020s, you ask and they say, mid-90s? Oh, no. We have serial port connectors. This is 70s here. And you'd be like, what? No. Just to use a horrible example that horrified even me and made me really cut it out with the 90s jokes. We were doing a podcast lately on some OT compromises.
Ooh, OT.
Right. And the guy says, did you guys know there is a serial port to cloud connector? And he whips out a device. It's a physical device that can connect 3 TCP/IP devices to cloud. And it blew our minds because we thought, oh, stop it with the 90s jokes. Hey, stop it with the 80s jokes. 70s, here we come.
What's impressive? What's almost impressive about that is that stuff even still functions.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, well, some
Well,
things
I
were
guess
built
it's
to
true.
last,
I guess
right?
it's true what they say. They just don't make them like they used to, because there is no chance that something with I sincerely doubt that something with a USB-C port will still be functional 40 years from now.
I wish that was true about
that's
USB-A.
right,
Yeah.
That one I can let go of, definitely. But Anton, you're still, because of your unique position, right, you get to look into the production environments of a lot of very big organizations. And you were telling me you're still seeing Windows Server 2008 in production environments now, right? And some even older.
I mean, this was, again, I was talking to somebody. This 2008 example came from me talking to somebody from let's put it this way, like a tech company, but not like a cutting edge startup. Think about the previous big wave of tech companies, like late 90s startups or maybe early 2000s. And I sort of made a joke about, like, you guys are a tech company. Of course, you wouldn't have Windows 2003. I think you were founded in 2003. And the guy said, you're right. We do not have Windows 2003. That would be insane. We do have Windows 2008, though. At which point I was like,
you're proving the inertia thing, dude. Stop it.
Yeah, it's like, wait a second. You are not a Belgian bank or some kind of traditional conservative company in a conservative region. You are literally in Western United States.
Yeah, you have a budget. You could fix this if you wanted to, right? But they don't. And Anton, why?
And Kip, before you do that, let me just ask the obvious question, which is, why does it matter if they're still using Windows Server
Mm.
2008 in production environments?
Uh, this is interesting because I feel like we are starting to dwell onto the reasons for why certain old pieces of IT survive. And I mean, I think that splits into two things. One is this really bad? And the other one is, why is it happening? And I think that we should handle them in sequence, right? I think that I share some compassion for people who say, wait a second, nobody knows how to hack Windows 2003 anymore. I think this argument does not hold water. Maybe people don't know how to hack uh, mainframes. Even that is debatable because, of course, Gemini, ChatGPT, Google exists and you can look up some things. But I think that certain outdated tech may, in some ideal circumstances, be a risk decreasing factor against certain threats. I am grudgingly accepting that. But I think to me, the increased risk is still a dominating force. Like, you're likely to be indefensible if you say, hey, I use outdated systems. I use code written in PHP 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I use OS from many years ago. I use appliances that run libraries from 2004, which is, by the way, a real example from some security appliance maker, right? That came up in the media, right? I mean, yes, you may point at a small risk reduction angle, but then there would be a huge risk increase angle. So I won't support the you may be safer argument.
Yeah, I don't mean, just to be clear on that point, I don't think it's a good argument if for no other reason than that technology isn't able to even remotely run even the modern standard AV that is necessary to even know if it's under attack. I mean, there's you and essentially you'd be relying on security by obscurity is essentially that would essentially be your method would be a fallacy, right? So I
Correct.
complete, like, there's no justifiable way for it. um or maybe a better way of saying it is that, oh, we're safer because it's so old is bunk. So, and I certainly just accept that. I think everybody should. So given that, why is it still, which then moves us, I think, into the next question naturally,
Yeah.
which is, why is it still happening?
Okay, so this is another interesting one, and I think that I was discussing some security operations transformation, SOC transformation with a Deloitte colleague I have, and we were talking about this stuff, and he says he gave me a line which I really like, and I'm kind of attributing to the source in a sense, is that he brought up the question of a change budget as a kind of manifestation of a will to change. It may not be the budget in terms of money, but it may be that if you've run a massive IAM upgrade through your entire organization, now somebody shows up and says, hey, our SIM is outdated too. Why don't we change SIM? You may have the money because money is just a matter of somebody giving you the money, right? Here's money. But the will to change has run out. And this to me was a little too philosophical. My initial take was like, well, you can just make them. You order them. You tell them, change right away. You're the boss. You can just do that. I mean, I hold my tongue because that's a very naive take. You can't really order things and then have them manifest in many organizations because this change budget to me is real. It is a partial explanation because if you have something that's 20 years old, you had many chances to spend your change budget on that, but you spend it somewhere else, right? But to me, this is a partial explanation, is that the kind of a will to change is not there. And sometimes because it ran out, sometimes it's because maybe the perception of difficulties is too high. Think about the code written by an outsourced partner that you let go 10 years ago. Like, who would ever figure this out? You can't hire the same partner. You can't hire a new partner. He would never understand it. And you assume that this code would just be there until it retires. But it may not retire in the time frame you assume it should retire, right? So I'm not giving you a crisp explanation. We can probably discover one together. But I think there are certain contributing factors to that.
So in other words, it's complicated.
I mean, it is complicated.
It's complicated, yes.
Got it.
Interesting.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, I can tell you as somebody who's worked in an IT department, more than one, there's a lot of fear. Like, hey, that thing works. Don't
yes,
mess with it, right? Like,
yes,
you're
Well,
just going to
and that's
create
what I
more work for us.
assume is the issue, right? Is that there is this, um, yeah, I mean, that's what else could it be?
Well, that's a big part of it. I'm just going to tell you.
I feel if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing is definitely one of the factors. And I feel like in our beloved domain of cyber, it's a kind of a bad argument because maybe it only works because you have a modicum of luck and the attacker just chooses not to hit you there or hit you at all. So to me, the IT operational argument to me may be okay. Maybe if it's a system that stores data and it works, why touch it? But if it's something you haven't patched for 10 years and nobody hacked you in 10 years, doesn't mean it would not happen at this point. This one is weak to me. At least
Yeah.
if it ain't
It's
broke,
a risk
don't fix
question.
it. Yes, it ends up being that. I think the band-aids and like spend $5 now, spend $5 every year instead of spend 50 once is also a factor that I see. It's in this case, it's like real money, not the will to change. When people say, "Oh, it would cost us this much to keep it running," yes, but it's every year, right? It's extended support. It's consultants who have to kind of come and hand hold whatever. Yeah, but like we have the $5, we don't have the 50 to change it.
Well, and then sometimes you get your hand forced, right? A major security breach, a compliance requirement, a business opportunity that you can't take advantage of because maybe you need to make some kind of a machine to machine or an API to API connection, and your old tech just can't do that, right? Or maybe the thing just finally breaks in the middle of the night, and
Yep.
it's like I can't find any more parts on eBay to purchase to make this
Yep.
thing work again.
I mean that actually all of that has happened to somebody, right? Like we do know that. Like all of these are not theoretical, it may happen example. These are things that has happened
Yeah.
to people, but it hasn't. It's almost like, remember again another very dated example from the early 2000s. There was research about, I think it was done by Dan Geer at the time, about why it's cheaper to include security early. And it was like very like big impact, lots of headlines, but then somebody stood up and said, "Hey guys, do you know what's even cheaper? Don't include security at all." And then if you're not lucky, in 10 years, if it blows up, yeah, you pay that cost. But for 10 years, you save all the money. And that was kind of a disarming argument. Like if you like that was a choice. Oh, okay, then we'll do that. Yeah.
That seems like the default choice for most people.
It's more common than people assume. Sometimes it's not about shift left, do it early. No, do it later. How about do it
Right.
never? Okay,
Right.
well, we'll do.
Now, there's a big reason why some organizations are able to overcome their inertia. You and I were talking about LastPass. You know, you had Chris Hoff on your show, and he talked openly about, you know, how they had to do a complete IT transformation after their major breach. I thought that would be a good thing for us to discuss. I was hoping you could unpack that a little bit.
This was a really fun episode. Yes, I feel
So
like
people should go listen to it. I'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's from the I think it's 2024. We recorded it at a conference at MWise. It's episode 201. But funny enough, the motivation for this episode wasn't to tell his CISOing story, but the fact that he had a title at the time. I need to check if he still does, for Chief Secure Technology Officer. And that title was another thing that's really stuck in my head, because once I've heard it once, it just became so painfully, blindingly obvious. Of course, every Chief Technology Officer needs to be a Chief Secure Technology Officer. Why do you want to be a Chief and Secure Technology Officer? That sounds kind of insane. So something that was up to the moment you've heard it, it's weird. And once you hear it, it's obvious. That to me is a really sign of a good idea. Like when nobody thinks about it, and then by the time you say, everybody thinks, duh, it's obvious. So to me, that was maybe the most striking example that he's a CSTO. But in the episode, which, yes, I agree you should listen to, he does talk about the forced transformation as opposed to like planned transformation. Yeah, and this is something that you probably should hear from him, not from me telling the episode, because there are certainly pros and cons. Not that you're choosing it that way, but if you analyze it objectively, there are pros and cons in both. And of course, if you have the knowledge but not the motivation, then forced transition would provide the motivation for free, courtesy of the attacker, right?
Never waste a good crisis.
Yeah, correct. It goes very much into that line, but it's in the sense, his story is a very optimistic, positive story. He managed to build a lot of great things as a result, and things are better. They work better. They're more secure. They're just better. So yes, there's silver lining, but of course, I asked him directly, if I recall, hey, would you recommend this route? And of course, he looked at me kind of, not violently, but yeah, like basically it was a no. No was an answer.
Yeah, not the way to knowingly go into it. But, a lot of senior decision makers are not sophisticated risk managers, right? So the people who could choose to do a transformation more proactively, they just don't think like that. That's not the way they operate. And if you've got a boss like that, you have to make a choice. You either need to accept that, a necessary transformation isn't going to happen until a crisis arrives, and that you're just going to go through that, however painful it's going to be. Like that's just, a stop on your journey in that organization. Or the other choice is to leave, right? Is to say, I'm not willing to hang around and let everybody here learn this lesson the hard way, because that's going to be painful for me and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go to another organization and work for a sophisticated risk manager. I don't know that there's a third option.
I mean, the third option is some kind of gradual chewing through depth over time. I mean, maybe I think that maybe there is a gradual, we transform, burn, rebuild 5% every year, and then in 10 years we're done. But I don't think it's a maybe from my point, because there will be more new things.
Right, and then it kind of assumes that you've got a budget available to change your organization, and so you're just going to transform little bits at a time. That may or may not work, but I agree with you. That's a third possibility. Anyway, well, thanks for sharing that insight about Chris and having to go through an IT transformation on a no-notice, basis. Super, super painful. Okay, now that we've had an opportunity to talk about this inertia, right? This massive force of the universe. Have you ever seen anybody do a really good job of breaking out of this, rut? What are you seeing?
So I would start from an easy example and of course get to more complicated and more fun ones later. I mean, if you go say on X, on Twitter, and you talk to people who work for like really young companies, a lot of this is obviously not an issue because a lot of stuff runs quickly, gets rebuilt all the time, refactored, and sort of like if somebody takes a running start of that sort, it is, let me soften it a little bit, would be less likely that they will be stuck in a rut. If the culture starts with we get a rebuild all the time, it's unlikely they'll be stuck. Right now we have some pretty big sizable tech companies that are 20 years old. Hey, I work for one. So that may or may not apply to everybody, but I feel like the engineering culture of building things and rebuilding things is a strong solution to this. And it's also something that's unfortunately is a matter of DNA. I am not aware of what kind of Deloitte consultant or Gartner analyst you have to hire who would instill this culture. I don't know how to do that. I've never seen it done. But I have seen it in companies that had this in the DNA, where this inertia doesn't affect them or affects them much less. So this is like a easy but useless example. Yeah. So
You either have it or you don't.
right, exactly. So the second example comes from my time at Gartner, where there was some analyst, and I don't recall the name in this case, who invented the concept of bimodal IT, and it was a very 2010s idea, which I am so sad has not spread further. And the idea was that you within one company you build a if you're a slow conservative company, you have a slow conservative track in IT, but you also have a fast track. You sort of have two-speed IT, where if mainframe team changes things every year, but the container team changes things every week, they coexist in the same company. And of course, there would be interaction points, and this would be tricky. But you accelerate certain areas, and you keep them contained, keep them technical depth free, keep them free of inertia. But then the rest you don't help. You leave them be at their speed. And it is very possible that OT or mainframes, or I don't know what, probably cannot be accelerated, but you can probably live with them not being accelerated. You can live, they can be in inertia land, but you can have other land on the side. It may be kind of an island, an innovation center. I don't know. That term sounds very 2010s as well. But that you have two-speed IT. And you can't say, oh, your IT is full of inertia. Yes, it is over here, but not over there. That I've seen as well. And I guess I really wish the bimodal IT concept would, grow in awareness. And it wouldn't be stuck in like, yeah, Gartner made it happen in 2010. And by 2015, it was forgotten. I don't know why. To me, that's like really relevant.
Well, IT fads come and go. I guess everybody thought that was very faddish, and so they dropped it. But I could see the virtue in it. It makes sense. It also evokes for me the idea of compartmentalizing my network, right? So that in case there is some kind of a breach, it's not going to just instantly take down every system. I don't know if that's actually part of what's going on there, but that's what came into my mind. Now. I really think this is such a leadership-intensive issue, right?
I mean, what else? And that's what it is, right? I mean, it's almost nothing else. Like, there's no one else that you can point to. There's nothing. I mean, inertia by definition is something that you're not going to stop it without an active force, right? That's what is inertia, right? If I get a giant boulder rolling, particularly downhill, but it's going to it's going to continue to roll until I stop it. It has inertia, right? So in order to stop this from happening, you need somebody to say, hey, go stop that boulder from rolling. That is that's why we use this phrase IT inertia.
Right.
I'm also much more nervous about a boulder that everybody tries to push a tiny bit every year. It does not move. And then next year, people assume it's unmovable. And then in 5 years, it's assumed to be part of the landscape. Well, in reality,
that's another really good. That's another type of inertia.
Yeah. It's like it's not moving, and people gently touch it, and then they remember, oh, it's unmovable. But it's not true. You can move it. Given if you need to move it, if you have the will to move it, if you need to erect a beautiful building in there, but you sort of remember that it's not movable.
Yeah. Sometimes I've been in a situation where senior decision makers take IT inertia for granted until somebody is able to say, wait a minute, that's not just IT inertia, that's actually a business risk. Let me tell you why that's an actual risk to our ability to do well as a business. And sometimes that can, change the thinking because I've just interacted with a lot of non-ITP, a lot of non-technical. I can get it out if I try. Senior decision makers who are sophisticated in their business decision making, but for some reason they just don't apply that same frame to the IT parts of their organization. And so you have to build a little bit of a bridge there. That can work sometimes, I think.
Wait a second, where they're rapidly changing somewhere, just not in IT, or what?
Well, where they understand business risk, but there's a mental block where they they just go, oh, that's just, all this IT risk. Oh, that's just, people whining, or that's just a vendor trying to get more money from me. Like, they don't
Oh.
see IT risk as being comparable, or, to business risk, which they do pay attention to.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've seen that. But listen, if you're somebody who is in this situation right now, you've got a server 2008 in your environment, and you want to get rid of it because you think that it's very, very risky. You can use any of these things that we talked about today. But let me just add a few more ideas. First of all, start small. But start now, right? Pick one system that needs to be modernized, make a plan, and go after it. Sometimes you're going to have to go after it several times before you're successful. And make sure you tell stories to the right people about how it could go wrong. I think to go to somebody and say, well, it's old, I don't think that's very compelling. Right?
What?
Okay, it's old. I'm old, but that doesn't mean I should go away. At least I don't think I should. Yeah, so if you're an IT person, get above this, ones and zeros way of thinking about it. Try to get into a business frame of mind and tell a business story. What happens if that thing goes down? What essential business function is going to stop? And how long is it going to stop? And how much is that going to cost? I think you're going to get a lot farther with that line of persuasion.
I think also the why has to be there, and it has to be very crisp. Because I feel like for some people, if they come with a why of like that's outdated, it may convince us in light of the discussion we just had, but it may not convince everybody else. And so, I'm sorry that it sounds kind of a little dumb, but if you come to somebody who's not a technical leader and say, hey, we still use Windows 2008 and the calendar says 2028, 2 years in the future right now. So, and it's 20 years old, Microsoft stopped supporting it 10 years ago, we should replace it. Be ready to answer the why question. Like, I'm sorry, I almost cringe while pronouncing this, but I've seen the situations of that sort where they honestly look at them with big, beautiful eyes and say, why should we change it? And you gotta have an answer except for outrage. And what do you mean, why? It's unpatched since 2016.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, okay.
It's intuitive to you, but it isn't to the other person at all.
Yes.
And I have often struggled with that because it's intuitive to me. I don't have a vocabulary to explain it because I've never had to. So you're going to have to find a vocabulary.
Maybe it's a 5 whys technique. I don't know if it applies here.
Yeah, that might work.
You say why? Because it's outdated. Okay, why? Well, because it's unpatched. Okay, why? Well, there's a risk of hacking. Well, why is there an elevated risk of hacking compared to last year? Nothing happened last year. So it may be the 5 whys would apply, and you would drill down to, because this other company got owned through this.
Yeah, and you know what? ChatGPT isn't good for a lot of things, but it could do that, right? You could go to ChatGPT and say, give me the 5 whys on this, right? And for some reason, psychologically, that actually helps me actually do that exercise for real, because it feels like I'm having a conversation with somebody else, and that just gives me a different energy. It's hard to describe, but that's the way I feel about it. So I think we've covered what we wanted to cover, right? We wanted to find out why are organizations, even ones with lots of money, still clinging onto this outdated technology. And I feel like we've done a good job of unpacking that, and then also talking about, what can we do about it? Jake, did you have any final questions or comments on this?
I guess my last comment would really kind of just go to something Anton said toward the middle of the episode, but just to highlight it, let me put it this way. I don't want to be the lawyer who has to defend retaining Windows 2008 servers in the aftermath of a big breach, right? I think particularly most judges and most lawyers who get involved in the aftermath of a breach that involves technology that is that old, you're gonna have a hard time just not convincing them that it wasn't almost per se negligent. And the thing is that's frustrating is like it might not be per se negligent. I mean, there's room for nuance here, but I think particularly for the uninitiated in IT, if you just say, well, gosh, that's almost 20 years old, how can it possibly still be working, and why are you still using it? It's like that's at least that sure is my reaction, like almost disbelief. And then if I start thinking about it a bit more, I'm like, wow, I'm actually impressed that serial port thing even exists, because I'm impressed that a piece of hardware with a serial port still boots up and works. Like all of these things go through your head, but I think when you start getting down to responsibility and negligence and all the stuff that the lawyers are going to fight about, it's real hard to defend this, particularly if here's the real kicker, right? If I then say, if I'm the lawyer or what if I'm the opposing lawyer and I say, why didn't you change it? Why didn't you fix it? Why didn't you swap it out? Like, do you have a good answer, right? Because I tell you right now, IT inertia might be the reason. That's not a good legal answer to provide. Oh, well, because it just was there and nobody thought it could be moved. And I mean, like, there's nothing you can say.
Yeah. So IT inertia is a common practice, but it's not reasonable.
It's not defensible.
Right. That you can basically say that if you are 10 years behind on PHP and 20 years behind on OS, then it's not reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There you go. So that was my wrap up for you, Kip.
Okay. Any last words, Anton, our guest? To give you the last word.
I mean, it's part of reality, and also I think that the last word is this: if you work for a company that's not like that, maybe a startup building tech, or if you work for some Bay Area company that was started last year and maybe build security tech or IT management tech, you can't rage against IT inertia. You have to kind of just accept it exists at your clients. That to me is a client empathy, is what I want to end with. If you are a vendor and you want to wish IT inertia away, you can't. It applies to AI, and I don't want to go on a long rant, but it comes up a lot when people say, oh yeah, AI would transform IT jobs would be gone, this, and I'm like, have you seen some of these companies? Have you seen how their IT is run? There's almost no way that some of the data is available in digital form. It's on freaking paper. So no, unless you have AI with robots who can go rough through paper, they know they're not transform. AI would have no transformational effect on them, on some of them. And that to me, and I blame for being an old guy who doesn't know what he's talking about, because AGI 2027. Sorry guys, I bet on IT inertia over AI progress in this case.
Thank you, Anton.
Yeah,
so Anton Shavakin is our guest. He works in the office of the CISO at Google Cloud, which gives him an amazing perspective on this topic. And that wraps up this episode of the Cyber Risk Management Podcast. So today we learned why organizations still run outdated tech like Windows 2003, Windows 2008. We talked about why that's risky and what you might be able to do about it. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.